I host a little thing called Around the Kitchen Table, and it's every once in a while after services, maybe once a quarter, where we just bring any questions, any thoughts we have, and we roll them around. And so at the last one, it was brought up, one of the songs that we had been singing that Sunday. It was brought up, how is this part in line with principle and in line with truth? In the song, it says, God needs us to shine our light. How can God need us? And what, is that arrogance? Is that truth? Is that this? Is that that? Which sparked a great conversation, because I said, yeah, and there's even other parts, where it says, to shine his light, and we say to shine its light. What is it, right? Have you done that? Have you taken the man out of God? It's hard, isn't it, with language? But the second we put God, the concept of God, into words, into language, we box it in, do we not? We box it in. And we try so desperately as humans to open that box and to let it out. But we have within us, we're meaning-making machines, right? We define things. But even the ideas that we have that we can say, like in Unity, if we release the idea of an anthropomorphic God, that God is a man that's out there somewhere ready to do things to us, we can release that idea and we can try to have different languages. Then we start saying things like God is it. And we're not an it either, right? So it's like going beyond identities, going beyond genders, going beyond the box. But the truth is, I believe, that we can never even begin to speak about God and get anywhere close to the truth. Hence world religious wars, hence arguing among people, because when we try to define an experience as far as into language, when we try to squeeze it into language, we will limit it, no? So I said to him, music is one of the hardest things because it has, these words and it has these constructs that creates these images. The other beautiful part of that song is like a story that actually leads us from the box into greater expansive ideas of God, because it says God is the sun and God's so much more than the earth and the sky and all of creation. God is creator all in all. God is all of it. So it's actually through music that you can, even though words can limit, through music you can paint an experience, can't you, of the transcendent experience, of going from a limited idea and a box and going, even that's not quite it, maybe this, even that, until you just release all thinking and you open to the full experience, no? Yes. Excuse me. And that's what it's always about. It's always about the full experience. That's the only reason we even have religion. That's the only reason we come together, to practice the presence. To practice the presence. So today is about being in the presence. Today is about gathering tools and opening up the floodgates so that we can experience more Godness. Not so we can learn more about Godness. Not so we can philosophize. Not so that we can argue. But so that we can open to the experience of the presence. I was working on the dryer at the house. The dryer has a little issue. However, it was put in, it's full, and something's not happening, so the light's going on, and it's saying that there's a problem. So I had the guy come. One of the problems is that the pipe isn't exactly right. It's not a pipe. It's going to be like this today, just so you know. The whatever metal bungee thing that's supposed to be in there. Instead, it's a little box. It's a little metal box, and it's too skinny, and so there's not enough airflow. So anyway, long story short, had the dryer pulled out, and I asked the guy before he left, I said, is there anything you could do just so that I could use it right now? So he went and grabbed a pair of pantyhose, cut them, and put duct tape around them and stuck that on the end so the link could go in there. And then, I kind of milked that. And then when I realized I've been milking this too long, a friend came over and said, let me take a look. And there was some lint stuck in there, some lint clogging it, which the guy actually didn't find when he first looked. He took a look, but there was some lint clogging it. And so I said, well, what about the vacuum cleaner? Let's stick the vacuum cleaner in there. And then I said, after that, let's get your leaf blower, which was in the car, and let's power that leaf blower in there. And he was like, yeah, that's good. Let's do it, right? So we did the vacuum and then get the leaf blower and just plop that sucker right on there, right, for the rest of it, for anything that might be left. And what happens right after that is the smoke alarms go off in the house. And I was like, wow, isn't that amazing? Isn't that so like God? You can't see it, but like the dust particles are in the air and the alarm's going off. Isn't that like God is omnipresence? You can't see it, but it's everywhere. You know, when sunlight shines through and all of a sudden you can see all the stuff we're inhaling? Like you can see that you wouldn't really just go around and dust something right in front of your face because you're eating it. So it's like, epiphany. And then he said, you know, actually it's because it's a gas blower. So it was it was a gas blower. So it was actually picking up on the gas, which is good that it works. But isn't that true? Isn't it true that God as omnipotence and God as omnipresence and God as omniscience is everywhere, but we just can't see it. We're just missing the tools. We're missing the alarm sometimes, and we're not really missing it, right? That's an illusion. But we're missing the way of sensing it and seeing it because it doesn't appear to our visual field. We know from science that such a minute amount of what is existent is visible to the eye. There are even different amounts of cones in people's eyes that can see different spectrums. There's a little test you can do online to see how many parts of this rainbow you can actually define, and that can show you how many cones you have. Bees have more than we do. But it'll show you what you can actually see. The same thing with our hearing, right? The same thing with our sense of touch. You know, one of our least developed senses is our sense of taste. Apparently, it's a lot from the nose. The sense of taste is a lot from the sense of smell. So we have all these senses, right? But they're also tangible, right? But spirit is that invisible essence, that invisible infrastructure, that invisible sense, that invisible love that is everywhere present, always accessible. And it is ours only to sound the alarm, to open up to greater experiences of that. But what happens in the human condition, what happens is that we go and we start saying, you're not emitting, God. I'm asking, I'm standing here, and you're not emitting. In Unity, we teach that there is meditation, affirmation, and prayer. That's your map to awakening. That's your map to experiencing the divine. Meditation, affirmation, and prayer. We like that. Meditation is that opening up. It's simply being open and receptive and receiving. It's being an observer of your thoughts, releasing those thoughts, going back to the breath or whatever the tool is, and being in a state of receptivity, turning off the thinking so that you can just be and receive. Affirmation is giving your mind a kind of bath. There's a minister I know that likes to tell jokes, and I'm always a little scared when they start coming out of my mouth because I never get them right. But he said that someone said one time that unity is brainwashing because of the affirmations. It's brainwashing. And he said, what's wrong with a clean brain? Was that good? At least it was right. Usually I would start it with, there was a guy that said, what's wrong with clean brain? And then there's brainwashing. Doesn't make sense anymore. So that idea of affirmations is, can we cleanse the brain of that which is not in alignment with our good, that which is not leaning us into openness, expansiveness, into Godness, into God consciousness, into awakening, into what is the anointed one or the awakened one, the Christ. Anything that is hindering me, keeping me from that. And it's that tool, that practice of being awake and being conscious and applying those. And then prayer is that activity of launching a heart's desire, launching a universal asking and receiving. It is conditioning, not God, not saying, hey, the signal's not going on, but it's saying, tune me in, tune me up. So it's that process of applying principle and shifting our consciousness, actually working with our beliefs and our consciousness at a deep level so that there is a shift. It's not sending off a letter to Santa saying, this is what I want, here, give it to me. It's saying, I know there's a signal. I know there is an emanation within me. Help me align. Prayer is us aligning with the divine, aligning with source. There's a couple other keys that we're going to get into later that aren't part of the basics, but I think that are keys to where we get kind of jacked up in the process. So we have these tools. We have these tools to support our awakening. But still, the human condition is somewhat like what happened to me with the printer this morning. I went to print, and there's no signal coming from the printer, the wireless printer. It's just not connecting. And then I went to connect it from the USB cord, and it's plugged in. I know it's plugged in. Not printing. So what did I do? Well, I did sit there for quite a long time, too long, just trying it over, until I thought, one of those old printers in the garage has to have a better system. Maybe it will remember that. And so I went and I exchanged the device, and it worked. Do we not sometimes need to just exchange the whole framework from which we're coming, so that we can recognize that the signal is always there, the signal is always radiating. God consciousness is always radiating. Charles Fillmore said this: God is three things. And if you've ever taken Lessons in Truth was was my first Unity class. And my teacher was David Ridge from Unity of Boulder. And all I really remember about the class is that we started the class in the middle of the class, and we ended the class with omnipotence, omniscience, omnipresence. And we all had to say it together. We had this little rant. Omnipotence, omnipresence, omniscience. And it was like, we'll talk about, most spiritual communities have like a word like God. We have a word that we have to practice pronouncing. We have 3 words we have to practice pronouncing that we have to say it 50 times in a course so that we can get it. But the whole piece was about expanding our idea of what Godness is. So Charles Fillmore says this: omnipotence, God as omnipotence, is infinite power. God is infinite power, all the power there is, and all powerful. Omniscience, God as omniscience, is all knowing and all knowledge. God as omnipresence is God as mind. The one mind, capital mind, that contains all, and all ideas exist in the one mind. God is everywhere present. There is no place where God is not. Then he goes on to say he, she, it, whatever, is in all, through all, and around all. Omnipresence is a spiritual realm that can be penetrated only through the most highly accelerated mind action. I'm going to say that again. Omnipresence is a spiritual realm, invisible, but no less real if we have the tools to access it. A spiritual realm that can be penetrated only through the most highly accelerated mind action. So, are we ready to have that highly accelerated mind action? Are we ready to develop our capacity, to develop our power, rather than looking around and saying, it's not emitting, saying, get me some other tools so that I can access what is truly here? Eric Butterworth in Unity, A Quest for Truth, says many of the symbols of the Christian church have their origin in the tendency to find someone with skin on. To embody the divine presence by someone with skin on. He says unity is concerned more with finding a consciousness of oneness with God, and then seeking to express God in thought and in act. Sometimes the images we have of God limit us. Are we willing to keep trying them on? It takes courage. It takes courage to begin to ideate what works for you as a God language, what works for me as a God language, to be exploring and to be an explorer, to take on the wandering soul and to take it as the hero's journey walk, to take it as a path and to take it as one that's okay. It is so much easier, is it not, to believe that someone else has the antenna. Someone else has the antenna, and if I just go to them, I'll get the answers. If I just go to them, I'll find out the way. If I just outsource, I'll arrive. But it ain't that simple, is it? We are all so uniquely patterned that it is ours to keep removing, keep subtracting. We think sometimes on the spiritual journey that it's all about adding to, it's all about getting more. How can I get more? How can I do more? How can I build more? It's usually, right, just like the master teacher, all of the parables, everything just turns it over and goes, you were thinking A, B, C, guess what? It's 1, 2, 3. It's usually completely the opposite. How about subtracting? How about subtracting the words for God? How about subtracting the ideas? How about subtracting the texts, the box, the limitation? How about subtracting it all and recognizing the possibility, just trying it on, even though it takes courage, even though it takes boldness, even though there's the threat of the idea in an illusion of the burning fiery pits of hell and whatever else kind of concepts people limit us by. The fear of being wrong, the fear of not finding. Can we keep subtracting until we just arrive at the breath? Until we just arrive at the experience? Until we just arrive so completely at the moment, the one moment that is always existent, that we find in that moment peace. In the human condition, we're always trying to make all of our decisions for the rest of our lives. We're always trying to figure out everything else. But everything exists right here in this moment. When I was in ministerial school, one of my favorite teachers, I call him my Zen or Buddhist unity teacher, Reverend Robert Brummett, taught pastoral counseling. And he is so masterful at it. It's like if you feel like you can't you can't connect with an emotion, you're going to go into an appointment and it's like, but my stuff's not up when I go in. It's like with a pinpoint, he can just dance through and like, listen, here's a question, and then all of a sudden the floodgates open. And they're not even exactly responses. They're somehow he takes where you are and then he just, and I remember going to him as a student, and it was actually after school going back to him and saying, Robert, you're so good at this. Could you give me some of those lines that you use? Could you give me some of those questions? Like, I want to write them down. And he said, you can't plan it out, Erin. I could give them to you, but they won't be relevant because they come from being so present in the moment, from knowing God as omnipresence and knowing that when you know that God, the grand overall design, love, energy, whatever you want to call it, the force field, the vibrational universe, the cosmic Christ presence, whatever you want to call it, that it is omniscient, that it is everywhere present, that it is inexhaustible, and that it is safe to take the leap of trusting that I don't need to prepare by storing it up because it is the living water and it will be there in the moment that you request it. What a gift to get. Sig Paulson, former Unity minister who has made his transition, that ministered here, said, light is the substance or creative energy that God, the Creator, is constantly pouring into the universe, into every creature. It is the cosmic energy that not only makes, but runs creation. Not only makes, but runs creation. We are this light. We are this light. Now, I said earlier that I was going to talk about two other pieces. We have the MAP, meditation, affirmation, and prayer, as our spiritual tools. But I said I was going to talk about two other pieces because these are the pieces that I think keep us stuck, even when we use meditation, affirmation, and prayer. And they are mindfulness and our agreements. Mindfulness and our agreements. Mindfulness is the magic agent. Because without mindfulness, we're not able to see our stuff. Without being mindful, sometimes there's not enough space. You know that idea of subtraction? There's just too much addition. We're adding all of this stuff on there. But mindfulness is the key that lets us in every moment become so patiently aware, create so much space in the mind that we're not attached to the ego, so we're not operating from it, but we are actually practicing the presence. We actually can't practice the presence without being mindful. The next piece is our agreements. And this is a big one. And it would be embodied in Unity's fifth principle, action, that words are not enough, it's action. But what we make agreements with makes a difference. We can pray all we want, but when fear comes down the runway, if we shake its hand and go, "You got a deal," then God can do no more to me than God can do through me. And mindfulness is truly the tool that helps us see our agreements. If there is something that we're not experiencing, it's probably because there's an agreement there we're not aware of. I have a great Unity minister friend who anytime you started doing the woe is me, anytime you started attaching your I am to anything, anytime you started, applying principles of illusion and separation and evil and something bad is happening and it's going to get me whatever it is, I'm stuck. Even saying I'm stuck, Unity, cancel. We're so cute. But he would really stop you and he would take your hand and he would say, "Let me pray that with you." Right? And you'd be like, "Get away, ah, never mind." But in the invisible field of omnipresence, Charles Fillmore says that we need to be so mindful that we are in an infinite substance. We are in substance. There is substance right here. And our ability, faith is a perceiving power of mind linked with the ability to shape substance. We are shaping substance by these thoughts. We're shaping substance by the mental and spiritual activity. So be clear on the agreements we're making. We've all seen it happen with other people. We've seen them launch a prayer and then go act in a way that it's like, "Oh, sister, honey, that is never gonna come through that." Right? Pray all you want, but you're never gonna get it through that. Mindfulness helps us see that in ourselves. Mindfulness helps us see that in ourselves. The good news is, Charles Fillmore said, the kingdom is within your own mind. It is in the minds of everybody. The kingdom is within your own mind. It is in the mind of everybody. Eric Butterworth says, we need to contemplate Jesus' words. God is spirit. The principle of life and intelligence everywhere present at all times, just as accessible as the principles of mathematics and fully as free from formalism. Does the principle of mathematics give special attention to the blackboard that is gaily adorned and marked with fine figures? No. It works for all alike impersonally. Neither does God care for forms and ceremonies or ritual or long, eloquent prayers. These things may have an influence upon the individual in helping him to feel a sense of communion. And to that extent, certainly no one should say they are wrong. But we must remember that they have absolutely no influence on God. They influence us. What is God? Here we are faced with a definition which can only limit the limitless. We could say God is mind, God is life, God is substance, but whatever we agree God is you. This may seem shocking to you, to think of yourself as God. But we did not say you are God, we said God is you. Ice is water, and all ice is water. But not all water is ice. Whatever your life is, it is God. The life in you is God life. The wisdom in you is God intelligence. The love in you is God love. The good news in this is that everywhere we are, infinite wisdom is accessible. The good news is we are patterned for godness like birds are patterned to migrate. The good news is that no matter how many times we try, no matter how many times we ask and then we don't listen, acting like we don't have a receiver, it does have no impact on the emanating signal. The emanating signal is vibrant, alive, and it doesn't matter our past. It doesn't matter the limitation of a mind in a true space of authentic exploration. The wandering soul will arrive. Namaste.